Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler, in association with Square. Square helps you with your business needs from menu management and online ordering to payments. Visit square.com for more. Now, what is going on with the big tech multinationals at the moment? This week, they're all in some kind of chassis at the moment, as Sean O'Casey would say. Twitter is trying to restrict direct messages to those who are paying. Google has finally launched its ChatGPT rival, Bard, in Europe, and Microsoft faces some antitrust action from the European Commission over Teams. Tabitha, are you confused?
I'm a bit confused. There's a lot going on here, and I think we'll start with Twitter. I was reading today that Twitter has lost almost half of its advertising revenue since Elon Musk bought it back in October. He bought it for $44 billion, and he's lost half the revenue in that time. What's going on there?
This is the biggest mystery in tech, why Elon Musk, who allowed all sorts of nasty accounts back on Twitter, has lost half of the advertising revenue. Nobody I know can figure out what on earth is going on here. But it's possible that the woke market capitalism sector has decided that placing an ad alongside Andrew Tate or Tucker Carlson's new Twitter talk show interview with Andrew Tate may not be the kind of thing that they want their brand besides.
So it's partly to do with what content is on Twitter. And we know that when Elon Musk took over, that they slashed the amount of content moderation staff as well. So I wonder, did advertisers just lose confidence in the platform?
Yeah, I remember being at a meeting a few months ago with an awful lot of senior advertisers. It was a totally separate event. It was a big media event. And I spoke to one of the most senior guys in Core, which is one of the biggest ad and marketing agencies in Dublin. And he told me that they had had a meeting with Twitter and that Musk had called into that meeting. And he told me that the whole thing seemed unhinged. And his message back to his advertisers was, no, we maybe dabble in Twitter, but do not be putting your big campaigns in there. Now, this couldn't be happening at a worse time for Twitter because, as we've already discussed, Threads has launched, Meta's Threads, the Instagram spin-off. And there's one thing that Meta is very good at doing, and that is monetizing social networks. Most analysts I've seen are predicting 5, 6, 7 billion euro revenue streams for Threads on its current trajectory. And that would overtake Twitter within 2 years.
And it has estimated 150 million users in a very short space of time. So we know that people are there. Do we have any idea how many users there are on Twitter now? Could that be feeding into it? Because we have seen the arguments about bots, etc. Do we know how many real users there are on Twitter?
The last semi-reliable number we got was around 250 million. About 250 million users, up to maybe 400 million monthly active users. Now, Twitter is in a bit of a doom loop at the moment because it's not increasing the number of users it has. As we know, it has tried to make some people pay via Twitter Blue, and we can talk about that in a second and a few controversies over that. But the problem is that Musk is having to pay $1 billion a year back in interest alone on the 44 billion, because part of that was with debt. Now, when revenue falls so much, advertising revenue, that was Twitter's main source of income. That's now fallen off a cliff. He still has to pay the interest payments, which means he'll probably have to fire more people or make some cuts across the board because people are not signing up to Twitter Blue in the kind of numbers that he had hoped. Now, as we've seen in the last few days, he is trying to boost that.
That's it. And I think that's what we'll get into now. It's that it seems to me that they are trying everything they can to generate revenue. I mean, they did hire a new chief executive of Twitter in June. She was the head of advertising at NBC Universal. So obviously the focus very much is still on advertising for sure. But they are coming up with other strategies in order to generate revenue. You mentioned the paying for the blue tick verified accounts. That was in February time. Take up of that, do we know how successful that was?
It's generally considered to be poor. So as of March or April, a couple of months ago, it had, I think, earned $11 million in ad revenue. No, not in ad revenue. What am I saying? In Sorry, there's a big truck that's just decided to rumble outside. I don't know if you heard that. Um, can you hear that?
No,
Can you hear that?
no, I can't anyway.
Someone's drilling. Okay, I'll take that from
Take
the
that.
answer from the
Yep.
top. Your question was, it was,
How
do we
successful was
know?
it? Verified.
You,
Paying
you
for
really
verified.
can't hear that.
No, really
Okay,
can't.
it's gone now. Okay, how successful was it? Well, as of March or April, we knew that the Twitter Blue subscriptions had earned Twitter about $11 million, and that is a drop in the ocean uh, of what it needs to make to even come close to servicing the 1 billion a year in interest payments. Its latest wheeze is to try and pay creators. So Twitter now has a plan where if you're an influencer or creator, or you've got a big audience on Twitter and lots of people reply to your tweets, say, for example, Twitter will now, it says, share a portion of the ad revenue from the ads delivered in the replies to your tweets. Now, that comes with a few caveats. First of all, you have to be a verified paid blue tick member to earn this money. Second, the people who see the ads, which pay you, have also to be verified and blue ticks. So that's a couple of strong caveats already. And thirdly, the only people that Twitter is currently rolling it out to are people who Musk himself likes. So there's no form that you can fill in to apply for this yet. And that has drawn controversy as well, because Andrew Tate was one of the first people, the controversial Andrew Tate, in a lot of trouble in Romania at the moment. A couple of other significant edgy figures. The Washington Post did quite an interesting piece on this during the week. So, but anyway, that is his strategy, and that is Twitter's strategy to try and get more people to sign up. If you think you can be paid even, €100 a month or €200 a month, yet alone 10 grand a month, maybe if you're an influencer or you're a creator, you'll sign up, and maybe that will draw more people onto the platform and subscribe to Twitter Blue.
So that just sounds to me like a premium version of Twitter, rather than what the blue tick originally was to verify that you were a journalist and you were who you said you were, or you were an organization and you said who you said you were. That isn't what this blue tick is anymore at all. It's a completely different platform, essentially, or a different offering for users.
Yeah.
Do you think, though, because what I want to know is there's clearly an awful lot of people who want to go over to Threads, for example, and they're looking for a certain kind of platform. These measures don't seem to be improving the Twitter platform at all. I mean, is there any scope for them just improving the platform and making users want to be there?
Well, what Twitter's current management, i.e. Elon Musk, because everything flows down from him, what they say is that the principle of free speech and what differentiates Twitter from other quote unquote woke platforms is the thing that they hope will bring people onto Twitter and will keep them there as the world's town square discussion. Town square. What's actually keeping people on Twitter, people like me, for example, who use it every day, is the fact that there are still so many accounts and newsmakers who are there, who through gritted teeth are staying on the platform. And it's impossible to ignore. If you were following the Ortiz saga over the last 3-4 weeks, journalists from our own publication, from other media organizations, they were live tweeting the whole thing. They weren't necessarily, covering it live on their own blog. We were, but I'm thinking particularly of the broadcasters. They were covering it live, blow by blow, very entertainingly, very well on Twitter. They were not doing that on their own platform. So as long as that remains the case, it's kind of impossible to ignore.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's something that we've spoken about so many times, is who exactly is Twitter for? And journalists are definitely one of them. And it's not like we're seeing journalists on Instagram live blogging or doing live stories of these things. And so Twitter in that sense is the platform for that. So we might see if Threads ever does land in the EU, what kind of difference that will make to Twitter. But Twitter isn't the only big tech company that has been in the news in the last week or so. Microsoft will next week face its first formal EU antitrust investigation. Can you tell me what's going on there?
Yeah, basically, this has been bubbling under for a while. So as you know, the big video calling platforms are Zoom and Teams. They're really the big two. Google would say that its own Google Meet is also a big platform. It kind of is, and Cisco with WebEx as well. But really, it's Teams and Zoom. And Teams came from nowhere because guess what? It was bundled with Microsoft and Microsoft Office. And as we've seen time and time again, Microsoft still owns your Office computer. And therefore, like in our office, for example, as soon as Teams became available during COVID, we all started to use it because that's just the easiest, lowest friction video call platform to start using, particularly if your IT department have already bought licenses from Microsoft, and Microsoft is bundling it there. Now, the European Commission says that possibly is an abuse of your position in owning the Office computer ecosystem. And they've been in discussion with Microsoft. Microsoft has tried to make some concessions. It looks like they're not enough. Now, this is the first antitrust action that Microsoft has faced in about a decade. If you won't remember this, but I do, in the early years of my reporting, Microsoft got into an awful lot of trouble with Internet Explorer because in the early days of the web browser market, Netscape was the big player. Microsoft comes along, bundles Internet Explorer, and all of a sudden everybody starts using Internet Explorer and ruins the web browsing experience, in my opinion, for about 10 years. But anyway, different story. So they do have history in this regard. And it looks like the Europeans are saying, now you're kind of doing the same again with Teams.
And this came from rival Slack. They complained in 2020 that the bundling practice broke the EU competition laws. But again, Microsoft aren't the only big tech company that have faced these anti-competition probes before. Others, Apple, Google, Meta, have all faced similar probes.
Oh, yeah. And I think what Microsoft would say is, look, we understand what you're saying, European Commission, but you might be going a bit too far here, because if you take the iPhone, every time Apple launches a new service, take FaceTime, for example. FaceTime is a video calling service and an audio calling service, which is used on Macs and iPhones, and you can use it on Androids and on Windows, but it's a kind of a janky, awkward experience. Nobody does it. So there's an example of Apple using its powerful ecosystem to make sure that lots of people use FaceTime, for example. You could say the same with the AirTag, which is a rival to Tile, but AirTag only works with iPhones. Therefore, and works better with iPhones. Therefore, people bought AirTags. The difference, I suppose, is that Apple doesn't have really a monopoly, or it's not as dominant in its one section, which is smartphones, as Microsoft is in Office software. And that's kind of the difference.
So what kind of consequences could Microsoft be facing here if it doesn't end their way?
Well, they could be forced to separate out Teams altogether. You have to go actively looking for it as a download. So they wouldn't be allowed to bundle it. They may not be allowed to even strongly suggest it. They could be looking at some sort of fine or something from a monetary point of view, but it's the one that they'd be more worried about is that it's not a natural thing for people to download Teams. I think the European Commission has missed the boat on this.
I think if you are,
if you are in a kind of a David Brent style office and you've been using video calls for the last 2 or 3 years, your David Brent IT office manager who is still smarting from having to give up his BlackBerry, of course he's going to go with Teams, okay? Because that's what that's the video service that every single grey middle-aged person will use. So I think Europe has missed the boat a little bit on this, but it could still be very serious for Microsoft.
Completely. And finally then, Google, we're very much in the post-hype era of ChatGPT. It's not really holding on to us. It doesn't have such a grip on us in the tech world anyway right now. But Google Bard launched last week in the EU. It's Google's answer to ChatGPT. You had a go at that. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting. They finally got to launch here. If you remember a few weeks ago, the data protection commissioner gave them a big red flag, said, "You're not allowed to launch here because you haven't told us enough about it." Google went off, put together a few slide decks, and now they've launched it. It's quite similar to ChatGPT. There are some other features which could be potentially useful. A feature which was supposed to launch last week, it didn't. You can upload pictures as well as prompts. So if you want to add extra context to a query or prompt, you can actually upload a picture as part of your query or your prompt. Now, me being me, I couldn't resist just getting it to say some, mean things about Google's CEO. So I literally, one of the first things I asked it to do was to tell me the worst mistakes that Google had made. And it gave me a list of products which including, what did it say? Oh, Google Glass was there,
Mm.
Google Buzz, there
Some
were a
of its
few.
worst
And it said
mistakes,
these
I
were
think, wasn't it? Is that what it said?
worst
Yeah.
mistakes. It repeated back to me. So I was able to quote Google's worst mistakes include, and then I said, give me some disadvantages associated with Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai. He gave me a big list of how he's weak on leadership, that he surrounds himself with people who don't let him make good decisions and he should do better. He should. And I
Wow.
said, whoa, yeah. I mean, Google, I mean, come on. I know it's a new service here and I know this is AI, but be
Pretty
nicer to your
brutal.
CEO.
Pretty brutal.
Pretty brutal. If I'd written that, the PR office would be on to me. Hey, what's, I mean, where's all this coming from?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I listen. It was Bard who told me. So when I actually wrote a piece on it. I kept saying, Bard told me that Sundar Pichai, when I asked Google Bard, yeah, Sundar Pichai is not a great leader, said Google Bard.
Crazy. But what
You know,
about some of the other concerns that we have more generally with AI, with ChatGPT, in terms of, I don't know, misinformation? That we have similar concerns
mm.
here with Google Bard that we do with ChatGPT or any other chatbot.
Yeah, and to be fair, so the concerns are misinformation because it's trained on a lot of data, but it doesn't necessarily know what's true or what's not true. Again, with the whole thing with a large language model like ChatGPT or Bard is not giving you an accurate or truthful answer. It's giving you what an answer typically would look like to a question you have asked or query you have posed. And there's a difference between those two things. So Bard is very upfront about that. It's also very upfront about its own potential bias. For example, if you wanted to give you advice on something or give you tips or describe something or start you off on a document that you're preparing, it admits that the data that it is giving you back may be biased because it may be trained on information that were largely put together by one demographic or ethnic or gender group. So all of those things are definitely risks with Bard. But on the other hand, if it helps you, if it knocks 5 or 10 minutes off kind of email, for example, Bard is supposed to be integrated with Gmail.
Ah.
So at some point, that's going to be very, very handy. I already sometimes now, just with an email reply, it'll suggest something. Yeah, that's great, thank you, and I'll just hit the button.
And
That's fine.
is it like a plugin that it's sitting there within
No,
Gmail, or you do it separately?
it will sit there within Gmail
Okay.
eventually. That's the plan to integrate it. So in the same way that Microsoft Bing, don't laugh, Bing has sort of integrated parts of ChatGPT into it
Right.
right now. And that it kind of is a reason to give Bing a go. I mean, Bing is a bit of a joke still, and it's very poor on European results. But, ChatGPT is good. So if you think you can get ChatGPT style answers in Bing without necessarily having to set up a different account with ChatGPT, maybe you'll do that. So overall, I think it is a good move, smart move for Google. They have to do it, and it will probably get better. But it definitely comes with a lot of those health warnings.
Why hasn't there been the same kind of buzz around Bard in the same way that we saw ChatGPT? Because I mean, it really was everywhere when ChatGPT launched, and we were
Yeah,
talking about it all the time. Bard, it could have passed you by.
because it's not new.
Okay.
Because all of the stuff that we've just talked about and what we've done podcasts about, that ChatGPT being the first major large language model which was user friendly, which was released, all of that stuff, we discussed it for months. But Bard largely does is kind of the same thing. So even in the headline that I wrote in the piece announcing the launch, I had to put Google's ChatGPT rival, because what people know is ChatGPT. You know, you talk about tablet, you often talk about an iPad. You
Yeah.
talk about a vacuum cleaner, you still talk about a Hoover, even though nobody buys Hoovers anymore. And ChatGPT has become, the byword for that.
Yeah.
Bard, I can't figure out what I think about Bard. Bard
Is in the
as a
name
as a
Bard.
yeah,
Yeah.
Bard, like Bard Simpson, or is it your Bard? I mean, Bard. It's a funny one.
But I would say it's
For
easier to say than ChatGPT, which was a big stumbling block I felt when
yeah,
ChatGPT came out. Bard is easier.
it is, but because we all got over that hump, we now all know what ChatGPT is. I can make a joke in passing, to my sort of mid-70s uncle, and he'll kind of know what I'm talking about. If I say Google Bard, Google has historically a problem with its brand names, though. I mean, it, other than Google search and Gmail and YouTube, I would say, can you name another Google brand?
No, but only from the research, like the Google Buzz. I don't even know what that is.
No, and then Google Meet, it's had two or three different names for its video calling and its calling
Yeah.
services, and so it has historically had a problem with that. And Bard is okay. It may not be a great name, but in answer to your question, why aren't we talking about Bard? We're talking about it now, but because it's a tech podcast. But I don't think it will light the public imagination unless it comes up with something absolutely amazing. The images thing could work. If it integrated into Gmail, that might give it an edge. But other than that, Google really needs to speed up on its integration. So anyway, and we haven't even talked about how AI is going to kill us all, which I know is a topic that sometimes comes up. However, Tabitha Monaghan, who produced this program and who was in conversation with me, thank you very much for this interesting conversation. Niall McGonigal as well, who was on video, and also to Gav Hennessy, who was on sound. And that's all we have time for. Adrian Wackler here. You've been listening to On the Big Tech Show in association with Square. And we'll talk to you the same time next week. Bye-bye.